The NBA All-Star Weekend is behind us to talk about in the NBA. This is episode 10 of Third and Five. All right, welcome in to episode 10 of Third and Five. James Thwaites, Dave Rice, and me, Simon Hampton, here for another week. We've been talking a lot of NFL on this podcast, but I think this is going to be a pretty NBA-heavy episode. So there's the three of us, five topics as always that we talk about across American sport. Gents, how are you doing?
Oh, well, bit of fun over the weekend with the NBA games and NBA All-Star games. Some better than others. Some Aaron Rodgers news or non-news today.
Non-news.
We had the NBA jersey leaks for next season. So if you haven't been to our Instagram page, definitely go there. We've put them up there. The Detroit Pistons one looks awesome.
So they're doing They're doing one thing right. Just not actually playing very good basketball.
Detroit.
They're putting out fire jerseys, but absolutely
I think
rubbish
it's crucial for a rebuilding team. Though.
Yeah, not many people kind of in demand to buy them, but okay.
I mean, apart from that, it's slowly warming up over here. Bit of better weather, which is nice, but I think it's going to snow this weekend again.
We're upstate. We're a few hours north of the city, and we got this Airbnb, which is up this sort of kind of steep driveway, and turned up on Saturday, and the driveway is completely covered in snow, and we're driving this Toyota Prius. And so
wow.
we pushed the car up the hill basically, with four of us. So yeah, there was a bit of a rude awakening for city slickers like ourselves, going countryside, dealing with driving in snow. But
speaking of snow, we've almost got the opposite with Dave. You just got back from Arizona, right, Dave?
Yeah. That was 10 days. 10 days there. It was definitely a good reprieve and a good chance to get away and see a new state. A couple of cities there. I actually, on the weekend, I was in northern Arizona, which was in the morning was just as cold as New York would have been. So, there was a little bit of snow around actually. You didn't see it fall, but so it wasn't like I was only in warmth, but most of the time I was in Phoenix. But yeah,
you got to see an NBA game, right?
Yeah,
I got to see the Suns. Yeah, got to see CP3 before injury. Awesome game, eh? It's one of those, and it kind of has, for me, made me sort of want to go to sort of more games, especially in what we'd call a smaller market. I mean, calling Phoenix small is probably not right. It's probably sort of top 5, 6, 7 biggest cities in the country, potentially. But, just in that smaller market where, compared to a New York or LA, and this where they really live, the locals live and die for all the sports teams, whether it's the Cardinals or the Suns here. And, they were pretty sort of hardcore fans, and, there were a lot of people standing for a big chunk of the game. And, and from my point of view, as being a neutral, I was kind of celebrating, some of the shots the Clippers players were making was unbelievable. And I was kind of, sort of cheering without being too loud and just sort of realizing that I'm like a complete minority here. But yeah, definitely
definitely
cool game.
You've probably encountered something that's probably a bit weird for us Brooklyn Nets fans, which is an established franchise with a loyal fan base.
Yeah.
Obviously, the Nets haven't been in Brooklyn that long. They were obviously in Jersey before that. The Suns have obviously been there for a while, and they're actually having a really dominant season. So
yeah, and that's the thing. I mean, everyone loves a winner, but you're right. That's also. Yeah, they've got that established. You probably see that more with a Knicks game than a Nets game in New York, because New York's got that, certainly been at Madison Square for forever pretty much. And and you see that just from not even necessarily going to the game, you see that in the crowd. It's just a shame.
I actually weirdly think the Nets had almost a better atmosphere pre the big three turning up, when they had guys like D'Angelo Russell and Jared Allen and Karis LeVert emerging as stars, and they were a really fun team to watch, and Brooklyn really got them behind them. Obviously, they sort of had to make those trades to go after a championship. But I remember that there was a season there where those guys were really blossoming, and the atmosphere at the Nets games was pretty good, actually.
Yeah, I was talking to somebody the other day, and they were saying that they've been following the Nets since they were in Jersey, and they were saying that it's been disappointing for them to see basically all the kind of diehard fans get priced out of the big games that come in. So like the Golden State Warriors and things like that, where it's $200 plus for like nosebleed tickets. Or like Lakers games, where you just get the out of towners coming in, and it almost feels like a home game for a Lakers team or a Warriors team.
Yeah, and I think basketball in general is. This is my sort of opinion on it. I think a lot of people support the player more than they necessarily support the team. So I think LeBron's and Steph Curry in particular have kind of driven that, where people aren't necessarily diehard Warriors fans, but they love Steph Curry, I reckon.
No, absolutely not.
I'm going to stand by this. I know people that like they support LeBron till they
New
die.
Zealanders or Australians that do this. I think if you're an American,
country thing.
Oh yeah. No, for sure. I'm sorry. Yeah. Sorry. I'm just no, for sure. But on the same token, you living in fucking New York, like there's a shitload of people from all around the country that they're not going to have any allegiance to the Nets. Certainly not the Nets or the Knicks. They could be from any other part of America. And I'm just saying they'll be diehard LeBron fans. And what supported my claim here, you look at the jersey sales around the country, LeBron is sold everywhere. That's not because there's no other team to buy.
No, this is such a silly argument, Dave. If you are an adult and you have a 8-year-old kid and you know what kind of legacy LeBron James is leaving behind, like Michael Jordan.
Oh, so you're saying it's only because of kids' sales?
Go out and buy.
Are you saying it's kids' sales?
No, there's definitely adults as well. But what a stupid argument.
I would say that most sales are kids, though.
Yeah, like what a stupid argument. Obviously, there are people that will follow a player, like New Zealand fans, like that followed OKC for ages because of Steven Adams, may have now, gone over and started supporting the Memphis Grizzlies. Good on them. There's nothing absolutely wrong with that. But someone that's born and raised in New York is probably a Knicks fan, and they do not.
That's my point. I said we're in New York. I'm telling you, there's a fuckload of people in New York that are not, that live in New York that are not from New York. Simple as that.
Probably, yeah.
I just guarantee it. Like you're going to hear all sorts of people, because people come here. I'm just saying, because of that, you're going to have people that from all corners of the country, and I'm just saying that there's a big chunk of those that might not have a local team. They're not from Milwaukee. They're from fucking Montana, whatever. So that's the sort of people that that's my theory.
So your theory is someone that is not from, let's just call it, they're from Montana and they move to New York, they're going to start supporting LeBron James.
No, they're going to have already established who they've supported. They've probably loved LeBron since 2003. I'm just saying that they're not going to just adopt. Yes, it might make sense to, let's adopt the Nets, but absolutely. If they moved 5 years ago, the Nets were fucking shit. The Knicks have been shit for our whole lifetime. They're more likely to have supported. And I'm just saying, I just think because of the way that the people move, you might be a KD fan, and now sort of, it's not necessarily that you. It's more you want to see that player succeed and that player sort of get a ring. So in the case of LeBron, he's bounced between 3-4 teams, and so you now support the Lakers. You have a soft spot for the Lakers when you went for you got your little Cavaliers singlet.
Interesting argument. I don't know if I fully subscribe to this.
Montana.
I've
never heard Montana.
No, well, I have, because of the bloody wine brand in New Zealand, like Montana wine.
Montana wine.
That's probably why we're all falling over it.
Yeah. Geez, that could have probably made our first topic there. That was good. Good stuff. But let's rip into the topics today. We, as I said at the start, we've got a lot of NBA stuff to talk about, given the NFL's going into the off season in a quiet period. But the big event in the NBA on the weekend was the All-Star game. For me, basically classic NBA All-Star game where the first three quarters are kind of boring, apart from the odd, alley-oop or dunk that's kind of fun to watch. But the fourth quarter was fun. It was good to see those guys pushing themselves a bit. And it was, watching Steph just try and drain 3 after 3 and get 16 of them was pretty impressive. And then watching LeBron get that fadeaway winner in Cleveland was pretty awesome too. What did you guys make of the All-Star game? Did you watch it?
It's almost like the whole thing was scripted, wasn't it? I don't
Yeah,
know. I did watch it. I think like where I get more kind of passion out of the All Star Weekend is skills 3-point and dunk contest, which we'll talk about in a bit. What I kind of like about the All Star game, it's a bit of fun to watch. Like nobody's paying, trying particularly hard. It's not kind of like football where you've got guys hitting into each other. They give each other space and kind of, don't take it too seriously and have a bit of fun with it. And I think that makes it, an enjoyable game to watch. It's definitely the best out of all the All Star games. And like you said, like there was some great stuff, like Steph Curry throwing that three from the corner and then just turning around before it went in, like and playing up to the crowd. I thought that was awesome. Like that's what you want out of an All-Star weekend. I love that it's in the
it's
middle
not
of the
it's not
season.
the best out of all the All Star games though.
What's the best?
Baseball they play a full out game. They throw
Well,
hard. They it's just like any game.
hang on. Well, I was actually talking to somebody about this the other day where I was like, what is a good All-Star one? Like the NBA is the best, and they're like, James, you're an idiot. Like the home run challenge. I was like, yeah, home run's like pretty fun to watch, but I mean, who gives a shit about baseball? Get out of the lockout, and then we'll talk about baseball.
Yeah.
What is that? What's the NHL one like?
NHL one's kind of like fairly similar. Like they've got like the game, but again, like
It's
because
the
like they're
physical.
not.
It's too physical. Like the three
Yeah,
sports that are more physical, you know, and obviously excluding baseball. There, I mean, imagine baseball. Imagine like a pitcher accidentally sort of getting one wrong and hurting someone. Oh, that would be not great.
the NHL one, right? Like the skill stuff is probably more interesting because it's like guys on skates, so like
Yeah,
they can do a lot
Yeah.
more with that. There's a lot more like shot stuff going into play. Like football can get like pretty boring. I think. I really don't like it. Like, yeah,
yeah.
but
I think
you know,
the All Star basketball game. Like I only watched. I sort of caught maybe most of the first half before I had to catch the flight, and it's definitely one of those things where you get like lots of sort of highlight moments. Like I remember Ja Morant, especially with Trey Young, that was like an amazing sort of like combination with Young just sort of floating his little assist that he does, and Morant with some pretty impressive dunks that we know he can do. So yeah, like as you sort of pointed out, Simon, I think the first three quarters from a competitive point of view, it was pretty, you couldn't really care too much, but you did get to see some pretty good sort of highlight moments sort of after that.
I think as well, like one of the cool things is that I think a lot of people tend to forget this is like the only time, like an all-star game is the only time some player would ever play with another player. Like
Mm.
it was pretty cool to see like the interactions between Luka and Jokic on the press conference where they're just giving each other shit. Some of these young guys as well. I think like it's just fun being around talent for
Like
a lot of these
I,
people. So
I actually saw a stat that LeBron and Curry have never lost a game they've played together. I presume that it didn't actually say how many, but I think they've
Team
Team
USA as
USA
well.
and
Yeah.
also obviously I think they've been every year, and because LeBron's 5-0 since they've changed this format, and so I think Curry's obviously been with them every time if available, and then you got Team USA, so it's like and I think there was
Maybe.
a bit of a dig at Westbrook, like LeBron just got to see what it's like to have a proper good point guard on his team.
well, question for you both. Do you think it's bullshit and a bit shit from Chris Paul that he was injured and he walked into the game just to play like a minute or two
Yeah.
and taking away that spot from another potential like youngster?
I mean, I'm not too worried about him taking the spot from a potential youngster. I'd be pretty annoyed at him if I was the Suns, certainly the Suns GM. But even just the fans, I think you'd be a bit like, that guy is crucial to Phoenix's hopes this season, and he might not be too missed in the rest of the regular season, given how well they're sitting. But if he had, even forbid he'd done something wrong, that had worsened his injury, and then he's out for parts of the playoffs, then that's a huge concern. And what, for 2 minutes in an All-Star game where he could try and get an assist or a quick layup. So yeah, I mean, it's probably not the end of the world, but I think you'd be a little bit annoyed.
Yeah, it's definitely it's an odd one. We were kind of discussing amongst ourselves as to why he was doing it.
It's just why, like what's his? Do they get like a match fee
we
or
thought
something?
it must have been based on like he's trying to get x number of games or like certain stats, but I think we'd already established that he's already got the most. So maybe he's worried that someone's nipping at his heels, so he needed to get a few. But crazy stuff. Maybe it's also another one that like he spoke to his medical and it's what's the injury? It's like a thumb,
thumb or hand or something.
Yeah, I mean maybe if it hadn't been operated on yet, like the chances of especially in like the low intensity sort of game that was involved, wasn't likely to aggravate it, but at the end of the day, just trying to catch a ball wrong can actually do that. You would have thought.
Doesn't really solve the why, though, does it?
No.
This was really LeBron's weekend, wasn't it?
Yeah, and you can kind of tell that by some of the minutes played as well. Like they definitely played it up for Cleveland as well. The fact that Garland and Allen both had 23 minutes each, but then Fred VanVleet, Jimmy Butler had 9 minutes each, and Jokic only had 21. Like,
yeah,
they're definitely putting in the hometown team to give the fans something. But yeah, I mean, like it was LeBron's weekend. It was surrounded by like lots of questions to him about his future, what he wants to see, would he ever return to Cleveland? And obviously the answer is absolutely yes, because anyone would want to go to that young Cleveland team because, like, again, like with those young guys, they look like they've got a championship in their future down the track. But yeah,
Where's his son in the pecking order? You know how there must be like a
so this
mock
is
draft at the moment.
This is an interesting talking point because anyone that's not aware, he's basically said that when Bronny James is drafted, he'll go and play wherever Bronny's playing, and at that point, he'll take probably the league minimum just so that any team can put him on his roster. I think Bronny, I saw he's ranked the 34th best prospect in the 2024 NBA draft class, I think it is. At the moment, that's obviously not factoring in the fact that you'll probably get LeBron as well on your roster, which I suspect will push him up the draft boards. But I think that's interesting because it means there will be good teams that potentially could be in play at that point. Obviously, there's a lot that can change in the next 3 years, but if there's a team drafting, 20th, and that's where Bronny's falling, that's a team that's, there could be good teams. A playoff team, and if you're getting LeBron as well, then all of a sudden that's a very, very attractive draft pick.
And has LeBron kind of come out and said that he'll basically just pretty much do it for free? Like he'll be a free agent and he'll just take bare minimum, whatever the minimum.
Yeah, he basically said. So I think he's a free agent end of next season, so he'll have a year there, and then Bronny will get drafted. And he said he wants to be paid maximum dollars before Bronny's drafted, but when Bronny's drafted, he wants to play with him in his final year, and it won't matter about the money. So he'll basically do whatever it needs to be to fit on a roster.
And that's pretty special, right? Like imagine like playing an NBA game with your son. I think like when are we ever going to see that again? But it'll be interesting. I think like probably dream scenario for a lot of things and probably create a bunch of storylines. It'd be pretty incredible to see that happen at a Cleveland Cavaliers team. Whether that actually does happen or not, it's another thing. But that's pretty cool. I hope it does happen. It would be really neat to see. But yeah,
it's going to be funny if it's like fucking like Detroit or something.
Yeah,
they'll look good.
They will look good, or New Orleans or something like that. If it's like a rival of
it might be like Hornets, with MJ.
Hornets, yeah,
MJ and LeBron joining up.
Imagine
MJ would be doing one-on-ones. Like he'll still want to play one-on-one with LeBron at training.
Imagine the ego though, like of a team that does like make that pick and then having to deal with LeBron if it's not a Heat, a Lakers, or a Cleveland that haven't really dealt with that before. It'd be interesting to see how many opinions LeBron does or doesn't have about, his son playing and, how they use him and utilize him. Well, I think there'd be some kind of like chat there about, and this is why I think like Cleveland would be pretty interesting, like because you could just sit back and just do like some kind of half-assed coaching thing as well. But again, LeBron's not moving with that.
Yeah, but it's also like it's still a couple of years away here, and LeBron's playing at an elite level now. But he's 37, and things can fall off pretty quickly at that age. And so, if there's a point in a couple of years where maybe LeBron's not the presence you necessarily, he's not the guy that he is now that you want on your roster, and so maybe it's not worth almost drafting.
Well, I think he's gonna be. Yeah, I think he's definitely gonna, scale back the minutes. By the time we're talking, 2-3 years away, he'll be sort of, I would say 20-25 minute. I mean, he'll probably in his mind never want to do that, but that's kind of how surely naturally that will kind of happen, where his just body's not quite able to hack it at that level. I mean, he's probably definitely getting inspiration from the likes of Brady, from Federer, and like those two are the most obvious recent examples of guys that have just defied the sort of physical kind of norm when it comes to elite sport.
I don't know, like this. That's definitely a topic for another day, because I think we're seeing athletes take better care of their bodies. There's advances in sports science, all that kind of thing. So we are seeing players naturally play longer. And all these players, not Russell Westbrook, Russell Wilson from the Seahawks is another example of somebody that like has a private chef and does all that kind of thing. And like apart from this season where he got injured, like he had played healthy for his entire career. So it's becoming more and more common. Like, I don't know. Like I said, topic for another day, but I hope LeBron does it. Like, it'd be cool to see. I do him in the league as well. Like, there's already this chat about what happens after LeBron leaves the league, and comparing it to what happened with Jordan when he left the NBA and finally actually did retire. So it'd be interesting to see the long-lasting impact. But
yeah, I think his career is going to be pretty interesting to follow the next few years. We've sort of made this All-Star thing, talk a little bit about LeBron here, but like, the Lakers are in disarray at the moment. So this off season, it's going to be interesting to see if even he forces a move out of there, or if he forces the Lakers to reshuffle their roster. Then he's going to be a free agent the following season, and then there's going to be the Bronny draft. So the final 3 or 4 years of his career, there's a scenario there where he plays for a handful of teams, and it's going to be pretty interesting to watch, I think.
Yeah, for sure. I think just before we move on from the All-Star Weekend skills contest, it was pretty fun. The 3-point contest was definitely the highlight of the weekend from like a skills point of view. The celebrity game was shit. The emerging talent game was pretty okay. The dunk contest was pretty forgettable though. Toppin from the Knicks won it.
How are players? So like, does each team that wants to enter someone just put it forward? Like, is it an invite? Like clearly, Ja Morant should have been there. Like,
didn't want to be there though. Yeah, and this is the thing, right? There's just like a lot of risk. The judging is very kind of all over the place. It's not consistent. And the Ja Morant actually, there's a great quote somewhere out there where he's just basically like, what is me going in there? How is it going to add to my career? It's not. It's going to be risky. So basically it turns into a rookies turn up and do it, or like fringe players,
like role players.
Yeah.
Which is top into a T. And he is actually quite a good dunk. He is probably, when I saw the list of who was doing it, but from just watching the Knicks occasionally during the season, he's definitely kind of pulls out the highlight reel dunks in the normal game. So I was always thinking he was a good shout.
Totally. And the player actually from Golden State Warriors, again, great in-game dunker, just wasn't kind of able to pull out all the stops, I think, at the dunk contest. But 3-point contest was by far the highlight. I
think it'd be great if they got like the 5 shortest guys in the league to do it.
You can watch them all do layups.
Get Chris Paul in the dunk contest, see if he can do it.
I reckon just put a trampoline there and just see what happens. Mascot dunk contest would be good as well.
Yeah. Let's move on to the next topic and talk about what's coming up we'll talk about the injury news first. So 2 big stories here. Chris Paul out for 6 to 8 weeks for the Suns. That'll bring him back, if all goes to plan, right around the start of the playoffs. And Anthony Davis out for 4 weeks for the Lakers. Let's start with Chris Paul. Suns 6.5 games up on the Warriors, 8 on Memphis, and then 12 on Utah. So they're in a really good position. Dwight, give me your take on this and where this leaves Phoenix.
Yeah, I think it's pretty interesting. Like, if I'm a Phoenix fan, I'm not super worried about this. Like, arrested Chris Paul for the playoffs is a great thing. I mean, he's not super young anymore. There was obviously that injury he had, I think, when he was at the Rockets years ago, where could have was basically a big what if. I'm not super worried about this. I think probably the most interesting part of that is if they drop out of first place, like do they potentially go up against, a Denver Nuggets? I don't see them dropping that far down, so they're probably still like taking, first or second spot, and then playing whoever that the winner of the play-in tournament is there in the West. So they've got depth. They've got Aiden, who has just been amazing lately. They've got obviously Devin Booker on that team. The key is probably for them to stay healthy throughout this as well. So I hope they don't overload them with minutes to try get like these probably unneeded wins along the way. But yeah, I don't think it's a bad thing. I mean, I just hope Chris Paul comes back as Chris Paul because probably on the West, I would like to see either them or the Grizzlies in the final. Kind of getting a bit burnt out with obviously, like the Warriors winning the final last year, but getting a bit burnt out with that Golden State Warriors team and their constant winning. So it'd be nice to see somebody else up there.
Yeah.
Even though I obviously like the Suns were in that game last year, but they didn't win.
Yeah,
no,
I think,
but yeah,
I think
it's fun.
I think I just quickly looked at, obviously this is diving into the detail a bit more, but they don't have the hardest schedule. Like even just the next two games, the Suns are playing the Thunder, Pelicans, then they got the Jazz, at least at home, and just Trailblazers, Knicks, like the Magic. There's quite a lot of like, I guess in the next sort of 6 to 8 games, probably 3/4 of them are against teams at the bottom that are basically out of playoff contention already, and for them they can get their rhythm, find their sort of mojo without Chris Paul during that time, and then obviously then they got the Bucks, they got Lakers who are going to be pretty desperate, Bulls, they got some challenging games later, but yeah, I think they'll be able to withstand it. I'll be very surprised if they didn't finish top two, and even potentially first. Like I think,
I mean,
because the Warriors aren't going to win every game from here on in either, so you've got to like that 6.5 is probably closer to 9 games or something that they could drop.
The Warriors have 23 games left to make up a 6.5. Like it's a big gap in 23 games.
Speaking of bigger gap, which one of you Cowboys was on the socials the other day and put out a big call about somebody jumping into second? Who was that? Was that you, Si?
Oh, no, I think that was in the WhatsApp group actually, so that was not for public consumption. But I think the chat was that Memphis would be a top 2 seed. I walked it back on the idea of the Suns being knocked out of the top 2, but I still think the Grizzlies are 1.5 games back of the Warriors, so they're right in there.
I know we're talking about injuries, but do you think there is any chance that Memphis could overtake the Warriors for that number 2 spot?
Yeah, for sure. I don't see why not. I mean, Memphis, they're in Memphis and people don't really talk about them that much, I guess, but 41-19, like they are, they're a fantastic team.
I wonder, thinking about how we spoke earlier about, watching the game in Phoenix and like, would Memphis be a sort of place where, because I can't remember them being good. Like, have they been good in the last 15, 20 years? I don't remember them being any good.
No, I was actually selling my wife on the idea of a spring trip down to Memphis, just not mentioning the basketball, but also trying to time it around an NBA game. So.
I love that you were doing that. I was doing the same thing.
I'm like Memphis in early April is beautiful. Lots to do.
What's that? Beale Street. Get around Beale Street.
That's right.
Yeah. Well, so I think I think they could definitely withstand them. I think Davis injuries, moving on to AD, I think that's far more of a concern given where the Lakers are. So the Suns have such a lead, they can withstand it. The Lakers are kind of at nearly, have to win definitely more than half their games, if not a little more. And they've now just lost their sort of star player. So
They're fucked, I think.
It's an interesting one with this play-in tournament. Like, I think, I mean, basically, they're in that kind of range at the moment because they're 27-31 sitting in ninth, Portland below them 25-34, and then just sitting outside that, you've got two or three teams, I guess. You got San Antonio 23-36, the Pelicans 23-36, and then Sacramento 22-38.
Those are teams that they should not be getting overtaken by. Like Portland just traded away their best player. Obviously Lillard's injured, but McCollum. The Spurs are rebuilding. The Pelicans are in disarray. I mean, the Kings are weirdly, trying to sort of go for it. But like, if the Lakers are getting overtaken by the Trailblazers, Spurs, or Pelicans, then God, that's going to be a fascinating offseason for them.
Yeah, and I think as well, like, Davis is out, 4 weeks. Westbrook has not been playing. Like, I never, go off. Well, I did kind of a little bit. I think it, can be used as a bit of a guide. But, NBA 2K ratings, I saw Westbrook drop down to a 79 overall ranking, which definitely highlights how bad he's been. There's, a whole bunch of stuff coming up now about LeBron and his agent being super annoyed about how the fact that there was no trades, and we've spoken about this a little bit, but basically really pissed off that they didn't pull the trigger on that trade for Westbrook for Wall in that first rounder, which I again don't know if that's, in my head, it seems like a ridiculous trade for the Lakers to make. I don't know why they would commit to that, because they're basically giving away a first round pick. But I mean, yeah, I don't know. Let's start the rumor mill now. There's a whole bunch of stories out there now about that they're going to put a trade package together for AD in the offseason, try get rid of him, try get some more assets. And Westbrook's probably triggering that player option they just got in the offseason, because why the hell wouldn't you for tens of millions of dollars? But yeah, I don't know.
$42 million player option.
Yeah,
so he's triggering that for sure.
Yeah, but AD, it's pretty tough work trying to, again, I mean, they won a championship, so the trade was definitely worth it, but ongoing, AD has been a bit of an injury problem. Is this what, third time? At least the second time he's been injured this season. So it's tough work. So I don't know at what point you start shutting these guys down and looking to kind of tear that roster apart and rebuild.
And then thinking about who you just mentioned, the Pelicans, that's the other probably main guy I think of when you think of injuries. Obviously, the team's not as much of a contender, but Zion's been such a disappointment from a fan point of view, because he came to the league with such sort of high expectation. I was probably the most I've ever I wasn't even living in America at the time. It's the most I've kind of followed college basketball was when he was at Duke. And then that was because of, that's what he did. I mean, he was kind of as big of a name as I can remember coming through the college basketball scene. And yeah, he's just not been able to get on the court, and you see him looking overweight in pictures online, and you don't know if they've been sort of altered or whatever, but he's another one that's just been, hugely disappointing that we can't see him out there.
He's a real letdown, yeah.
Well, it has been disappointing from the fact that, when he's on the court and healthy, he is super fucking exciting to watch. Love watching him. He is looking good.
Mm.
But his problems off the court and all these rumors that are constantly going around, he's having issues with his weight. Join the club.
Is the rumors is he like a partier?
No, I don't think it's a partier. I just think there's a I don't know what it is. Basically, what we're hearing is he's having problems with his weight. He's ignoring that. I mean, hey, I live in America too. We're all having problems with our weight over here. But when he's trying to rehab his current injury, he's ignoring Pelican stuff. So not engaging with them at all. JJ Redick came out today basically saying that CJ McCollum had not heard from him since he got traded to the Pelicans. That was confirmed by CJ McCollum as well in an interview. So that's super strange. As JJ Redick pointed out, the bare minimum you would do is text that new player and just say welcome to the team, especially if you're a face of the franchise.
That definitely screams that he's looking for a way out. I mean, more than you're like, that just speaks volumes of, because even just these guys would know each other just from like interactions at like that elite level, and whether it's from an all-star weekends or whatever. But like for him not to, that to me just says absolutely he's out.
And you're 100% right. He's gone. Like the Pelicans are going to trade him, or he's going to walk when he's a free agent. That's, I think.
How long is the rookie contract? So has he got 1 or 2 years left? Is it 4 years, and then there's an option for a fifth?
Yeah, I think that's the way it works. But I mean, like he's walking if they don't trade him. I think like the question is like, what the hell's like his trade value worth at this point? Like he's obviously been injured. He hasn't been engaging with the Pelicans organization, which I think makes it interesting. I think the other thing that kind of like raised some questions as I was thinking about it today and like hearing all this comes out, the Pelicans as an organization need to like do some major PR work and rebranding, because AD was there. AD wanted the hell out. Zion's there. Like something's happened with Zion. I feel like Zion's issue is more kind of like a player issue rather than an organization issue, but we'll see what comes out. And then I think even before that, who was there? Was it DeMarcus Cousins? That basically was there and then wanted out and said no to a big contract and then started having injury issues, which obviously didn't work out. But the Pelicans organization does not sound great at all. And like, this is another huge high profile superstar that's wanting the hell out of New Orleans.
And getting Zion was meant to be like, you build a franchise around him. And just look, Ja Morant went number 2 that draft. It was also very highly rated, but like, and look at what the Grizzlies have been able to do with a fit like firing player, which is exactly where the Pelicans should have been when you saw that announcement that they got Zion through that draft lottery. That 2-3 years later we should be seeing them in the top 2.
Yeah, and instead we're just seeing news reports come out about how he's not a team player. He is not committed to the organization. So I don't know. We'll see what comes out. But when former teammates are saying that and like unashamedly coming out on like news channels and stuff and saying it, so it's not like an unnamed source, you got to start reading into that a little bit.
Yeah, for sure. Anything else going on? Goran Dragic signed with the Nets yesterday.
He did.
Good little pickup for the Nets. They do well in the buyout market. They got Blake Griffin and LaMarcus Aldridge last year, and now they get.
They just because they're kind of all in to try and win this title in the next few years, and obviously last year it was thinking about 1 or 2 seasons that they kind of had to do it. I feel like they're very active on looking at these good opportunities to try and, because it's not just about having 3 good players. That's not going to win you the ring. It needs to be, the squad of 10, 12, particularly when you're getting guys that are not always 100% healthy or get vaccinated so can play.
And like, it does add some good depth on the bench, because as we saw, like with KD out, with Harden's injury, with Kyrie not playing in New York, it was a whole bunch of rookies, and it was really tough watching. It was 11, 12 game slide of like no wins. I think it's interesting though, like Nash used to play with Dragic at the Suns, I think it was. So there's obviously that there. That definitely helped seal the deal. But interesting, because all these players with buyout options, like they're just coming in on these 1-year deals. The Nets owner cutting Carter, who from the team, he was only on salary of $2 million this year, only $2 million this year and $2 million next year. But because of luxury tax, it worked out basically $20 million to cut this guy. A couple of these guys are only on the team until the end of the year. Like Drummond is only on the team until the end of this year, and then next year he's a free agent. They're going all in on this season. Like they're definitely considering that they could win a championship ring this year still. And I mean, you don't spend $20 million. They'd like to do that if you don't think, there's a chance. And, I think Vegas backs that as well. You look at the current favorites out of the East, and it's the Bucks and the Nets. So, yeah, it'll be interesting.
Everyone knows when this team's at full strength, they're going to be, one of the time. And we've talked about this. Like if they're a 7th seed, but they're at full strength, they could beat the Bucks. They could beat Philly. They could, any of these teams that they could beat them. All right, well, let's move on to the games coming up this weekend. The NBA is ripping back into action with quite a good slate of games, starting with, I think, the Nets taking on the Celtics Thursday night. But it continues into the weekend, guys. What games are you guys looking forward to?
Wow, I think it's pretty crazy. You come out out of the All-Star weekend and come in just to like a whole bunch of incredible games. Like from like a competitive team point of view, you already like said the Nets against the Celtics on Thursday. But I think even when you like go out from that, like I know we've been talking about it on our like podcast chat like quite a bit. Like there's some fire ones. Like I'm just watching NBA all weekend. We got Raptors take on the Hornets on Fridays, and then the 76ers going to the Timberwolves, the Mavs at the Jazz, and then the Clippers playing the Lakers. So Battle LA. Some great ones in there. That Lakers Clippers one is they're both in play-in spots. Minnesota's obviously like a bit of fun to watch with Karl Anthony Towns. Then again, like we've kind of spoken about this a bit before, and Dave kind of touched on it a bit with Memphis. There are a couple of teams that just don't get talked about in like kind of the NBA media over and over again because they're kind of not these like massive markets. And Minnesota's definitely one, but you know, it'll be a lot of fun to watch those games on Friday. But Mavs teams is pretty exciting to watch. I think kind of out of the Friday games, probably the one that I'm most excited about, if I had to pick, is probably that Raptors Hornets game. I really like, watching Ball play. I think our Hornets team's young and exciting. I kind of like it, so I'm pretty interested. I think that's where my eyes are going on Friday.
Yeah.
What about you? What are you on?
Pushing on to Saturday. I mean, I think you've sort of hit the head with Friday. I mean, Saturday, if a fully fit Nets team, you'd say Nets Bucks for sure. It'd be interesting to see how the Nets actually go in these next two games with the Celtics Bucks. No easy game there, and you know it'd be good for them to be able to get at least one win of those two. Two losses, is not great, obviously. But for me, the game to watch on Saturday is the Grizzlies Bulls, and that's probably just the two. I'd argue the two sort of surprise teams, because I don't think Chicago are going to be where they are in the East, and at this point, and then obviously,
you spent a lot of time talking about the Chicago Bulls without mentioning DeMar DeRozan here.
Yeah, I honestly thought we're pivoting to your fucking basketball team there for a second, Dave.
Mate, like many people in the market these days, I support players, not the team. So I'm a DeMar fan, not a Bulls fan. Don't really give a shit how the Bulls go, but I know he'll get for 40 every game. Yeah, no, but nothing to do with DeRozan. Just the Bulls are like, and I mean he's obviously a big part of that. But like both teams playing like attractive basketball and good to watch, and you've got two guys sort of at the top of the game, both all-stars on the weekend.
Yeah, and it's kind of interesting as well. Yeah, it's interesting as well because, like, I think I'm with you on that. So I'm going to 100% watch that Nets game if KD's back. There was a rumor coming out today that out of the first three games back after the All-Star break, KD has a chance to play potentially 2 out of the 3, but definitely 1 out of the 3. I don't know how much I buy into that.
I thought Nash
a chance he comes back.
Cold water on that. I thought he suggested that he was out for like another 4 or 5 days.
He did,
and that would probably mean he misses the Bucks game.
Yeah. So
I also think I don't know if would you play? I mean, obviously, like if he's kind of coming back, that's a pretty brutal game, and in Milwaukee, that they're a sort of a physical team. Like I think it's not the worst thing to like. It's not going to change the outcome of if they play again later. It's not going to be a psychological thing. I would definitely be giving him another week. I just look at Durant and just think he's so damn skinny. This guy could break. I'd be looking after him.
Well, I don't know. The game after that is the Raptors at home on a Monday night, so we'll see. But I think if KD's back, I'm definitely watching the Nets at the Bucks. I think Milwaukee's like pretty hostile place. They've obviously got a bit of history from that 7-game series that they had last year. So if KD's not back, though, my attention, like you said, Dave, is probably going to be where yours is, which is on that Bulls Grizzlies game. I think that's going to be super exciting. A lot of good basketball in there. But
I need to get a pass for that game.
Yeah.
I'm just looking. That's not on the Nets Bucks. Clearly, that would have been scheduled a while back ago. That's the cable.
That's the national game. Yeah,
national game.
Yeah. I think
Jazz Suns on Sunday is pretty good. I think the Jazz will be the first real test of the Suns post Paul injury, because they've got the Thunder and the Pelicans before that. I think they've still got enough quality to beat both those sides, but the Jazz are 4th seed currently in the West, and so that'll pose probably their biggest test without Chris Paul. So I would say that's looking pretty good on Sunday. And then Mavs Warriors as well. We talked about the Mavs just now being a fun team to watch, and going up against the Warriors will be good.
And hopefully see the Knicks knock off the 76ers.
Yeah, fingers crossed. It'll be interesting to see where James Harden comes back after his injury and actually plays for Philly, and if that return happens at that New York game. I mean, a Knicks game is always pretty wild. I think their fans are pretty incredible. So
there's a few times they get this. That's a 1 p.m. kickoff. Like, they kind of get these random early afternoon kickoffs. It's kind of, I don't remember seeing any at Barclays, but I think Madison Square does it for them.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of two Eastern teams. It's not a 10 a.m. for a West Coast team. So, but yeah, no, I completely agree. I think, I'm probably Sunday. I'm definitely going to watch 76ers at the Knicks, just because I want to boo James Harden through the TV, and then moving on to that Mavs Warriors game, which I think is going to be super exciting.
Sure, plenty of good games. Looking forward to having. It's been actually a tough start to the week because there's just no sport on right now. Yeah, like the All-Star weekend's a bit hard, but there's no football, no baseball, no NBA. Nothing.
Yeah, and we went into the All-Star break with that incredible Nets win at MSG, which we haven't talked about on the pod because we recorded our pod before it, but
young Cam Thomas.
Just sinking that, and I mean, just incredible comeback from the Nets, which totally wasn't expected. Dave was doubting the entire time, so
I couldn't watch it out of state. Fucking America's stupid bloody random cable rules.
Yeah, so Nets come back, do that against a team that's pretty good on defense, and then drop one against the Wizards. But such is life at the moment. Yeah.
So we didn't want to do 4 NBA topics this week, so we were thinking of other things to talk about, and one of the ideas that cropped up was to talk about the top stadiums, or stadia. I think stadia is the correct word to use there. Top stadia in American sports. You guys have been here a few years. You've traveled around a bit. You've been to some of the good NFL stadiums. I mean, the NBA ones are a little bit harder because they're sort of just arenas. But if you were traveling to America, let's say you're traveling on holiday from New Zealand when the borders open, and you want to go to a sports game, what are the stadiums or stadia you're picking out? What the games you want to go to?
Yeah, I think it's interesting, and kind of the way I've split this out is into different, I guess, sports. So we'll start off with kind of NFL and then kind of go from there. But in my head, like, if you're coming over to the US to watch a sporting game from New Zealand or Australia, you're going to SoFi in LA. I think there's no question about that. One, it's close to the airport, it's nice and easy to get to. 2, you're probably watching like fairly good teams, and you're at one of the most modern and expensive stadiums in the NFL. I think if you're a Cowboys fan, you're definitely making the trip to AT&T Stadium in Texas. But outside of that, like, if it was me coming into this, I'm going to SoFi or I'm going to Lambeau Field and watching
Packers game. SoFi's great as well, because SoFi's just like an example of just like, it's very American to me. It's like, billions and billions of dollars, this huge stadium, like the screen is enormous. It's like it feels like just a very American sports stadium. And I've been there for a concert, but not a football game. But I imagine the atmosphere in there is fantastic for a football game.
It's kind of hard as well because like you do have some of these other like newer stadiums. Like you got Levi Stadium, where you're basically blinded by the sun half the game on one side of the stadium. You've got the Raiders Allegiant Stadium in Vegas, which is a cool stadium. Like I've been there, and you're in Vegas, so why not go to a game? I think like there's no particularly awful places to sit in a lot of these stadiums. I mean, like, obviously you don't want to go to like Chicago in the dead of winter and sit up right in the nosebleeds at an outdoor stadium. But, probably from like if you want to go to just like a stadium, go to SoFi. If you want to go probably for an experience, Lambeau would be there. Dave, you've been to Lambeau. What are your thoughts on the NFL ones?
Yeah, like and I think you just pretty much nailed in terms of what you're looking for, because you've clearly got these brand new stadiums and very easily accessible markets, LA and Vegas, the two main ones there. But both, certainly the LA ones, that because they're both teams that have just transferred over there in the last sort of 5 years, like they're not necessarily going to have the same atmosphere that you're going to get at Lambeau or at is it Lumen Field where the Seahawks play?
Yeah, Lumen.
Or where the Ravens play, like where you've kind of got these really well established supporter base, and if you're only ever going to go to one game, I would argue you'd want to try and go where it's like that true experience, where particularly, I mean, Australia kind of has it maybe with Aussie rules, but certainly New Zealand you don't get the sort of how passionate and how like how it is in America. Like it's more akin to what you'd get in England with soccer, and so that's why I would rather go away from going to the sort of marquee new stadiums, and I'd sort of go for ones that are been around a bit longer. And I think Lambeau, and I think which I've been to, I can kind of talk of, and then Seattle is probably the other one that's right up there for me.
Well, I think went to Seattle this year and like couldn't get over how loud it was. Like the atmosphere in there is incredible, and that was the Seahawks having a pretty bad year for the first time.
And it was a bit of a dud game, right?
And it was a dud game.
Like,
they were playing the Cardinals, and it was a bit of the Seahawks played terribly, but like the fans just it's not really like anything. Certainly not in New Zealand, but not really like anything I've witnessed elsewhere either. It was a tremendous atmosphere, so for sure I recommend that one as well.
Yeah, throwback to when there was Marshall and Lynch and that touchdown run and that beastquake.
Yeah.
And I mean, like, it's a stadium that's designed to amplify the sound towards right onto the field. So like, I like that call. I think if I'm going to switch up gears and talk about basketball, like for me, this isn't even biased. I think it's MSG. You can't go past Madison Square Garden. It's the mecca when it comes to basketball. Like, I mean, if you're going to talk about anywhere else, maybe that's got history, like maybe TD Garden, where the Celtics play, but or the Staples Center, but
no, it's not Staples Center. I think it's
Crypto Arena.
.com arena.
Yeah, to me, like, this isn't even an argument. It's just 100% MSG, the world's most famous arena. I mean, it's an incredible place to go. I think if you're in New York, you've got to go to a Knicks game.
Yeah, and even like a good example of this, I've got friends visiting, Kiwi friends there, live in London, and in the next month, and there's obviously no football on. No baseball, but like for me, it was absolutely like there's actually games every night they hear it's either Knicks or Nets on alternate, and clearly for us it's easy to go to Nets game, but I'm 100% sort of thinking taking them to the Knicks game because exactly what you said. One, it's Madison Square, it's that sort of mystique there, but it's also the atmosphere that you're likely to get as well.
Yeah, and like when you've got players like LeBron James, saying like playing at MSG is something special, and them saying like there's just like this energy in the air there, like it's a good place to go. I think just before that game you were going to, Dave, like I think 3 or 4 days earlier, the Hawks are playing at the Knicks. So I got tickets to that game, which I'm super excited about. So I can hear some fuck Trae Young chants and watch him take a bow at half court again. So I'm pretty excited for that.
Yeah, nice.
It is
with basketball though. Just finally on that, and I think Thwaite said it just before. It is quite hard to compare because end of the day, they're all kind of just that sort of 15 to 20,000 seats arenas. So it is more probably going to be atmosphere driven than necessarily like that compared to say with the NFL where you've got 60-year-old stadiums versus brand new $5 billion stadiums. So it's like the modern architecture and things that are completely different.
Yeah. Any thoughts on base? You guys been to any other ones? We've been to Fenway Park. We've been to Yankee Stadium a lot.
To me, like it just absolutely is Fenway Park. Like it is incredible. I obviously haven't been to Chicago, but Fenway Park is just. I'm not a huge baseball fan, but like going in there, the surrounding areas of Fenway Park, where you just like the streets that just kind of line outside, and then you go in, it feels historic. Like you feel like you're just sitting in history, like like sporting history. It was very cool. I really rate that, and I thought the crowd as well. We obviously went to Boston Yankees match, and the crowd was great as well. Like super into it, super hostile towards the Yankees. That bullpen where the Yankees players like throwing pitches and warming up, and then just getting like heckled by all the Red Sox fans. I mean, like that to me is incredible. Yankee Stadium in New York is fucking terrible. I would not go there. I like if I'm a tourist coming to New York and I'm going to a stadium, I'm recommending people go to
Citi Field.
Citi Field. I was about to call it Shea Field. Citi Field and watching a Mets game. The Yankee Stadium's terrible.
Yeah. Like the thing about the Yankee Stadium is like what I don't think you'd realize if you're sort of just coming on like a week to New York and you're like, I want to go to the Yankees, but you can get just like for most games, obviously if it's the Red Sox it might not be, but you can get tickets for like $20-$25, and you're effectively kind of sitting on those leaners like you're at a bar, and you get a complimentary beer with that ticket. Like I reckon if you're not a big baseball fan, that's not a bad way to go.
Actually, I can feel James just yelling at me. We've got a friend, James. He's a big Yankees fan. He's telling me he would probably yell at me and say this, James, if somebody is coming to New York, you recommend them to go to a Yankees game because there's a lot of history with the Yankees. I don't like this stadium, but like Dave said, like leaning at the back of the stadium on a sunny day, having a beer. I mean, the Yankees have incredible records. It's probably exactly like the Knicks and going to a Knicks game if you're in New York. So I retract my statement.
Well, the thing that the Yankees did is they built their stadium where they just completely replicated what they used to have. They knocked it down next to it and rebuilt the identical replica. While Citi Field, when they were brand new, basically showed the Yankee Stadium what a modern stadium can look like, and it's the layout and everything is really user friendly, and it's definitely a worthwhile stadium to go to. And I think it is. I think you're right. It is a better stadium, but it doesn't have the history. It doesn't have the team that's as good. It would be, and I don't think many visitors come to New York and go to a one-off baseball game and go to Citi Field. Admittedly,
that's right.
Every motherfucker in the world has a Yankees hat. That's for a reason.
One other one I'd throw out there is PNC Park in Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh's a great sporting town, and the baseball stadium is right on the river, and it's a little bit smaller. And as is the case with these smaller towns as well, you can sort of get better seats for quite reasonable prices. But it looks out. It's open out, looks out over the river, over these bridges, and with the big city skyline, behind the outfield. It's like one of the best views I think in baseball, and it's a tremendous place to go and watch a game there. And they've actually got a great football stadium, I think, as well, which is right next door on the river, and so it's very easy to get into the city after the game, and so it's in a great location. So I'd say
Pittsburgh
Park for the Pirates is great, and then a Steelers game as well I would think would be pretty good.
Absolutely, I agree. I think it's a question I've always thrown out to people. I think they're the only sort of city in America where all of their teams are the same colors, and that have a franchise or in one of the major competitions, and so black, yellow, and white everywhere. And so I reckon Pittsburgh's definitely a good shout for any of the sports.
Yeah. What's speaking of baseball stadiums, just for a second, what's the one that they play like right on like the ocean or the river, and they sometimes have people sitting out in inflatable boats that like try and get the home run balls and stuff?
Yeah, that's San Francisco Giants. So it's right on like San Francisco Bay. It's another beautiful one. And if you sit high enough up in the stands, you can like look out over the bay. And they have like this counter inside the stadium and it's splash hits basically. And so it's just like a tally of all the home runs that have been hit out of the stadium and gone into the water. And Barry Bonds played there for a number of years. And so, big left-handed hitter. So he hit like the majority of those splash hits, and they'd end up in the river. And there'd always there'd be like 4 guys sitting in a canoe waiting out there, and they'll all be like paddling in to try and get the ball and land in the water.
Have they like counted back those splash hits from Barry Bonds now?
Yeah, probably.
They're only worth half a hit after his drug scandals came out.
Yeah. Well, Giants has to me they're probably on the west. I mean, obviously there's Dodgers as well, but like that's probably one I'd like to go out to actually. Probably more Giants so than Dodger Stadium. They've been good for a while now.
I think
obviously Wrigley Field's up there in Chicago as well.
Yeah. I think from like an NHL point of view, you're looking at, obviously like Rangers playing at MSG. I think it's always cool. You've probably got a couple of others in there. I think going to that Minnesota ice hockey game, Dave, for the Minnesota Wild, they play in St. Paul in Minnesota, was pretty incredible. The crowd is just roaring and absolutely into it. For me, though, with ice hockey, I think MSG's great, but again, like Vegas with the Golden Knights, going to that game in Vegas at T-Mobile Arena was great again. Nice new modern stadium. Again, if you're in Vegas, just kind of take advantage of all these things, I think. But from a history point of view, MSG in New York can't really go past it. And then I think
to the NHL, I want to go to like the Edmonton Oilers or something, somewhere real far north in Canada where it's cold and they really get into hockey up there.
Well, that's what we kind of felt like, and that's partly why we wanted to go to a game in Minnesota. Like, I agree, you kind of want to, like, if you don't live in America, I wouldn't be targeting like the Rangers game personally, because like, one, it's going to be real pricey, but it's like you're better to try and go to somewhere that's far more like hockey driven. That's if you're really driven by the hockey being a big part of what you wanted to see.
Mate, Rangers are a very well established franchise. But
but I'm just saying,
having a good year this year as well. They're looking good.
Yeah, for sure.
They're doing well.
And it's kind of interesting, like when we're thinking about this, because I was thinking about college stadiums as well. But I think college stadiums, to me, like, they're not so much about the stadiums; they're about the experience, which I think is another conversation.
Well,
that's definitely another topic for another day.
They are also kind of impressive in the sense of like just the sheer scale of them, because I don't know about there aren't that many 100,000 capacity stadiums in the world. There's probably Nou Camp in Barca. I don't know if there's any more in Europe. And then I think when you look at the top 10, like in America, 8 of them or 9 of them are college football stadiums. And then there's a couple in North Korea, which, hasn't been audited. So we have to just take their word on it. But, so like that, the scale, because I've been to Kyle Field, which is where Texas A&M play. And it's just, the stadium's capacity is more than the town's capacity or the population of the town. So, I mean, clearly most people drive in from a few hours out or wherever, their kids might go to the school and they live somewhere in Texas. But like, it's crazy there. And that's scattered throughout, particularly the South. So I feel like that, it is the experience, but the stadiums are also bloody impressive because they've got so much money from the, the fact that they just don't pay the players.
Not having to pay the players.
Not having to pay the players. So line the rich white guys' pockets and
just building stadiums in the middle of nowhere. But I guess we'll talk about that another day. I think
we'll talk about that another day. Let's keep moving and wrap things up with our betting tips for the week.
Yeah.
I think
So
I was having a quick look at the NBA. I quite like the idea of the Pelicans getting up over Phoenix on Friday night. It's a random one. Second game of a back-to-back for the Suns. Maybe the Pelicans have something there, and I also like the idea of LeBron having a pretty big game against the Clippers on Friday. Given this, he's coming out of an All-Star game where he was the real star of the show. The Lakers have just lost AD. The Clippers, aren't up to much themselves, and so I feel like maybe this is an opportunity for LeBron in a big rivalry game to get some good numbers. So whether that's him, going the overs on assists or points or whatever, I think there's potentially some good value there.
yeah, I think honestly, like where I'm probably looking, it's all going to be NBA for me this weekend. I think I'm going to look at the Mavs potentially get up over the Warriors on Sunday, which is Monday for anyone New Zealand, Australia. But to be honest, like what I'm going to be looking at, and Simon, you brought it up with the with LeBron. I'm not going to be looking at LeBron. I'm going to be looking at players like Westbrook and things like that, who are probably going to be overs in certain categories, whether it's assists or things like that. So I'm going to have a look at my bets this weekend are all going to be around lines. So whether they're kind of point starts on a bunch of teams, like potentially plus for the Nets, depending on what they're at the Bucks, because I don't see them being favorites going into Milwaukee. Same probably for the Mavs, but I'm probably going to be looking at players like Westbrook if he's playing, to be sneaky overs on points, and a couple of these more role players at some of these other teams. The Mavs, maybe even Luka, having a 30-point triple-double or something like that, just to kind of like put a sweetener in there. But NBA is where I'm looking this weekend, and we'll put something up by Friday.
Yeah, I think I'll go NBA heavy as well. I quite like the Knicks to cover the line against the 76ers. I'll have to see what the line is and what that's sort of looking like, but I could just see the Knicks giving them a good run, whether they can get the win or not.
That's a good point, because like the Knicks have blown, what was it, 3 20-point leads, I think, in the last 30 days or something like that. So
yeah,
you might be able to get some good live bets as well.
Yeah, true, sure. Good shout. I mean, I might get around football.
Soccer.
My team, Liverpool, are playing Chelsea. It's Carabao, the League Cup. Whatever they.
Is it the final? It would
it's
be
the final, yeah.
This time, yeah.
So I'm thinking, put money on Liverpool to win on pens. So that would get you some odds. So I could easily see that getting, being a stalemate in the regulation and.
Well, I think they don't play extra time in that. I could be wrong. I don't think they play extra time in the Carabao Cup. Though,
I would have thought they would in the final, but yeah,
maybe they
definitely don't. They do in the earlier sort of knockout rounds, because for sheerly, obviously for health reasons, and these guys already play 50 games a year. Yeah. And then I think another NBA one. I think I actually quite like what you talked about there, Thwaites, with the Lakers. Obviously without AD, you're going to need, someone like Westbrook could turn around with a 30-point game. I wouldn't be surprised. I probably might look at that Lakers Clippers game. I see that as a good little game to probably bet on. But I'll have a look when the market's up.
I think taking your bet, Dave, it'll be interesting to see how Chelsea perform, because there's going to be a lot of storylines over there with Roman Abramovich, obviously potentially not being allowed to travel because of all the sanctions and stuff kicking in.
Did you see the Champions League is finals in Russia, which has now already been talked about being moved?
It'll be at Wembley or something, I reckon.
Well, they've already pulled Wembley out because they've got something else on, but that's going to be pretty crazy. There's going to be what a coincidence that Russia's hosting hosting Champions League when this has happened.
Didn't Kiev host it recently as well? Alas, I think it'd be good to be back on back betting on the NBA again.
Yeah, and we didn't obviously put up our notes for last week. There just wasn't a lot on, so we were just struggling to find stuff. Then we did a couple of cheeky bets. One of us put some money on Carl Anthony Towns to win that 3-point contest, paying $14 for every dollar. I did also put, like, in all kind of transparency, some on Patty Mills and the Clippers guy as well, but definitely cleared some with Carl Anthony Towns.
I did try and place some bets, but realized so in America every state has different laws and rules around online sports gambling at the moment. So when I went, it lets you look at it and as if you're about to place it, and when you go to place it, it tells you fuck off.
Arizona's a no-go.
Yeah, and you sort of have to have your location on. You basically need to have a VPN thing to do it. So I was unable to place my bet, and it didn't come in anyway. So
worked out well.
All right, lads. Always good to chat. We'll have lots to talk about again in the NBA next week, and maybe a bit of NFL news as well. If Aaron Rodgers makes a call, or we get some NFL off-season news happening.
On that, I was reading. I think 16th of March is free agent day, and so I think anything you'd expect probably a good week, because if he's saying he's walking, you'd expect him to, at least whether he tells it publicly, they'd want to know a good week before then so they can move around all their pieces of the puzzle to get what they need. So I'd be surprised if he hasn't made a decision by the end of the month, to be fair.
Yeah, I think it's coming soon. All right. Well, hopefully we hear something soon. Thanks very much for listening to 3rd and 5. Check us out on all the social media platforms, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and we'll talk to you next week.
Let's go Nets.
All right.